Thank you so much for that introduction. I am coming at this problem, I'll call the problem of digital disruption, from maybe a little different perspective than my two predecessors. But the idea is sort of the same, that digital is sort of fundamentally disrupting what we do. I'm coming at it from a media perspective, and any of you who, is there anybody who works in media here? Anybody in media? Oh boy, some maybe? Okay. Well, it's probably no secret to you that this thing that landed on my front porch in Denver this morning is not the way that you get your news now. Is there anybody who picked anything like this up today at any point to consume news? I don't see a single. Oh, I see. Oh, you're so supportive, Ryan. Thank you. We are an institution. I've worked now for the Denver Post for 7 years, and we are an institution with a rich and proud and wonderful history. We will be celebrating our 125th birthday next year. So we started in 1892, we've been printing this thing daily since then. But as anybody knows, in the last 15 years, we've gone through tremendous disruption in the industry. And that's not just, I'm not just limiting that to print, that's television, that's any kind of legacy media is going through tremendous disruption right now. So a bit about me, I joined the Post, Amy kind of talked about this, but these are all the things I've done. SEO was not something that I learned in school even, and I would guess that most of you probably didn't have that happen to you anyway. So it's something that I just started learning as part of my just sort of immersion in digital, and as we went there. So a little more about what we are. We're a leading provider of news and information for Denver and Colorado. We have 105 journalists, so what you might call content creators, okay, in marketing jargon. I call them reporters and photographers and graphic artists and editors and producers, and we create roughly 100 pieces of content per day. And for me, content is not something you buy, it is something that you consume to learn about the world around you. And for me, I think what makes us, of course, unique and different is that we're not necessarily focused on this national picture of what's happening. That's very important, but we're fundamentally local, right? We are trying to provide news and information to people in our area, help them inform themselves so that they can make decisions to help better govern their lives. That is what our job is, right? The other part of that, of course, is that we need to do that and we need to build and maintain a sustainable business. And that is an incredibly difficult thing to do right now. You hear the stories about newspapers either going out of business or not being able to change to the times, layoffs. We're going up against a lot of new digital pure plays that are funded greatly by venture capital that don't have to make profits. I'm proud to say that we are profitable and quite profitable at what we do. But it's a really competitive environment. Just to give you a little context of our audience, we reached 7.9 million unique visitors in September, roughly 24 million page views according to ComScore. About 40% of our referral sessions come from organic search. So, you mentioned that I used to do social media, and it's still very much, it seems like everybody now, you kind of wear a lot of different hats. Social media is really important. But I love search, and let me tell you why I love search. Because search is like the bedrock, and the audience that we get from search is the bedrock foundation for reaching customers, right? Facebook can do all it wants to turn that spigot down and tighten the lever and make it harder for us to maybe reach our audience. Social is a really, fickle is the word I'll use, platform for reaching people. It's changing every 6 months, and search is something that we've just found if we do it right, if we use the right tools, that it's going to be a bedrock for gaining audience that we want. I'll go into this a little bit more, but just to show you, just sort of where we've been, year over year, we're up 28% year over year in search referrals. We don't do any paid search at all. This is entirely organic. So that's something that we're really proud of. So what are our content specialties? And again, like for me, I just want to use another kind of term here. For us, a conversion is getting people to get to our website. That's really it, right? You come to my website, I show you ads. If you're really excited about the content, you might even buy a subscription. But really my goal is just to get you to the website. So what are our content specialties? Local breaking news, crime, bad weather usually does a lot better than good weather. Natural disasters, stories about our community. It could be religious, it could be just inspiring things that people are doing. It's not all bad news, even though I did use the word bad there. It's not all bad news. People really like inspiring stories as well, and we actually find that those stories do quite well. Local sports, our Super Bowl defending champion Denver Broncos rules the roost in our town. But again, on the more local level, high school and prep sports, really important for attracting people, gives people a sense of community. And then everything else, local sports. Sports, again, kind of rules it. Right now, during this dumpster fire of an election season, local politics is a really popular topic. Everything election, and it's not just limited to, and as I'll get into a little bit later, it's not just limited to what's happening nationally, but it's also even down at the state level and the local level. Again, you'll see that my theme here is that the problem that we're approaching and what we really focus on is local. Okay, so where we were in 2009 when I got here. We're on this homegrown content management system. It was old, it was clunky, it was bloated, it was architecturally deficient. I cannot tell you the number of conversations I had with Ryan, my contact at BrightEdge, about the structurally deficient things that were wrong with our content management system. And I'm really excited that, and I'll talk about this a little later, but about 6 months ago we launched on WordPress VIP for all of our content, and it's just made, in addition to all the other things that we've done, it's just sort of turbocharged our growth with organic SEO. We were using poor headlines. Again, what I call a headline, or what I have to say is a headline to editors and writers, like a title tag, right? Headlines are really important. And you can see, sort of right here, like, defense delivers is the headline at the top of the Denver Post this morning, okay? And since most of you are all really good at this and you understand good SEO, you'll probably recognize that defense delivers is probably the worst possible headline that you can put on a story about the Denver Broncos beating the Houston Texans and avenging the quarterback who spurned them for $72 million last year. But you can see, like, again, this is so search has been around-ish since the mid-90s or so. We're taking an organization for 125 years was used to doing this, and now suddenly saying, okay, like, I need you to be thinking about what people are going to be writing into their computer in order to find information about this subject. There's a power structure change too, right? It's not just the disruption, it's that media has become so fragmented and so democratized that it's not just people in their ivory towers saying this is what is important and this is what you need to know and I decide what you need to know. Like, we are in an incredibly competitive marketplace. Sports is a great example. It's not just me reporting on the Denver Broncos. It's everybody with a keyboard and an internet connection that's got access to Twitter or a blog or anything like that. And even beyond that, it's huge players like Bleacher Report and ESPN and others. So we were really, we overused puns. We used cute headlines all the time that sort of like those jokes your uncle might tell at Thanksgiving or something. You're like, oh, that's just really bad pun. That's the kind of stuff that it was literally shovelware. It was taking stuff that was on the printed page and then putting it online. And I still, like, even to this day, I go back, because we've got roughly 15 years of content on the internet. I go back and I see things now and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so bad. I have a couple examples here. Conflict, rife, and dragging death. Again, I'm coming at this from a news perspective. This is news. This is actually a recipe for fudge pie, a feast of fudge pie, no crusting around. So yeah, and you're thinking like, well, yeah, if I had like apple pie or like pumpkin pie recipe or something, yes. But this is where I was starting from, right? This is like what they were used to doing. They had been taught through years, and it's not like you go to school, but really it was this knowledge passed down from generation to generation. This is the way that you do this thing. Fundamentally, nothing was changing about it. For 100 years, nothing changed about it. I mean, yeah, like we went from putting stuff on hot type, I guarantee you nobody in here knows what that is. I don't even know what it is, but that's what they tell me it is, to like using computers to lay out the paper. Like that was, the technology changed, but the fundamental thing was at the end of every day, you had what was the daily miracle. I take this thing, I produce it, and it ends up on your doorstep. And again, we created content, largely around what we thought people wanted. But again, this is before like the era of big data, right? So we're sitting here thinking about what we think people want. And some of it you can sort of intuit, but not always. But we're not using data to help inform those decisions. So how do we start changing a culture? And when I started this, we had roughly 200 people or so in the newsroom. And the challenge was, different from what Michelle said, is that I don't have a team of people that have SEO in their title. They don't say, again, they're reporters, they're photographers, they're editors. And the reality is that when you're producing 100 or more pieces of content today, like every single person in the operation is interacting or having something to do with SEO in some way, shape, or form. They have to, right? Whether they're an editor writing a headline or they're a reporter writing a story, everything they do can potentially impact SEO, okay? So the first step was really optimizing the content we were already creating. This is the whole thing, right? Google is, and search engines in general, they want to reward great high-quality content. You hear that a lot now in just content marketing. I know it's definitely been a theme, and again, I sort of feel on the periphery in some senses of the SEO world, but like generally I know the things that you're focused on are like quality content is what matters, right? Well, here's the thing, like we were already generally producing lots of quality content, and so that wasn't the issue. The issue was that we weren't using the tools in our toolbox to be able to say like, okay, this piece of quality content, like what do I need to do to optimize this for SEO, okay? We were very good at storytelling, okay? And it doesn't mean that we weren't like free from, not doing things the right way. There are a lot of things where, again, going back to the shovelware analogy, where I take a 500-word story and I just take that and I put that on the internet. Like, not always the best way to tell something in a compelling way. Like, maybe there's a better form or fashion or way to do that. And that's kind of what I do now, is really focused on like, what is the best way to tell this story? Is it through a video? And if we do a video, like what are the things that we need to be doing to make sure that from an SEO standpoint it's standing out? Is it through a Q&A? Is it through a traditional story? So again, we didn't always use the best ingredients to sort of push those stories. We had mandatory classes of reporters, editors, and digital producers, okay? We explained what SEO was. I mean, that's where we were starting. Like, what does SEO mean? Like, what is that? What? SEO? I never used that before. What it was and why it was important. We really focused on keys to successful headlines. And this era has sort of shifted and changed. Like you'll notice this in media now, like clickbait is the term that we use all the time. You're like scrolling through your Facebook feed and you're like, I can't not click on that because it's so compelling. And again, I could talk about this later, but it's sort of this fundamental shift again away from little less SEO driven to more human driven, I'll say, which doesn't diminish the importance of SEO. It just means we have to approach the problem from a slightly different way. Other things, using full names, something you never do, like you use the word Manning to describe the former quarterback of the Broncos, not Peyton Manning. I mean, it's very simple things. I mean, that to most of you in this room is like readily apparent, right? Not when you're dealing with people who don't have a background in this. Adding critical location information, dropping archaic abbreviations, like, again, abbreviating long locations and town names and things like that. These are all things that we were doing. And then from there, it went down to the thing that takes a whole lot of time, but really is the thing that makes the difference, is one-on-one instruction. It's every time you're processing 100 pieces of content a day, and you're not going to get every single one. And it's really easy to kind of get down on yourself and like, I missed that. Like, it's been out there in Google world or search engine world for 5 days. Like, I can't go back and fix it. That's all right. Like, sit down with the person, whether it's the reporter who maybe was originally writing the headline or the editor who changed something that was better. Now with our new CMS, we can at least track these changes and we can understand like, okay, well, like this is the process, the editing process I went through. So now I can more finely target like where exactly the problem occurred. Extensive work with editors and copy editors and assistant editors because they were the ones primarily who were writing it. We've started to shift a little bit more of that burden onto our sort of original content producers. And again, you're gonna be thinking to yourself like, it's sort of this archaic structure, right? That you have these very sort of manufacturing line processes where like, reporter does this and then somebody else does this and somebody does this. Again, it's going back to this. This is how we did things. It's definitely shifting a lot more now, and it's good, I think, in a lot of ways. More people are taking responsibility for the SEO within the company. And then it was mentioned earlier, but like it is so important to call out praise, like good work. Like you have to do that. You have to show people that like, you're sending them through the ringer and like, yes, on the other end, it's gonna be painful while you go through, but on the other end, it's gonna really make a difference. The other big thing that we were really focusing on was thinking from daily newspaper to long-term content. Again, I go back to every day we're producing something that lands on your doorstep, right? But the internet's forever, right? So now we have to take and start thinking about, well, like, do I have to write about winterizing your home every year? Like if I'm doing a newspaper, like yeah, every year around this time, if you're where I'm from, I've got to talk about winterizing my home. Well, like what is the better way to approach that? Do we do just one sort of big article right around the time where the search traffic might suggest that this is, and that was the other thing too, like it was saying like what is from a search perspective, like what is the best time to be producing this content and then what should we create with it? Thinking about like that too. In fact, with that example, like I think we've written the winterize your home article like 7 times in the last like 5 years or something. And it's just like, this is not the right strategy to go about doing it. We've increased our focus on on-page text elements such as highlights, diving more into the technical stuff, H2 tags, subheadlines, headlines, and effective tagging. I'm not just talking about writing here, like we also have people who generate images. And again, this is an ongoing process. Teaching people the importance of like good file names and why alt text is not that field that you leave blank because you have no idea what it means. Like it is not to be left blank. Still fighting that battle. But we're getting there. Effective captioning. So who is our ideal customer? Like right now, we've actually, within the last year, kind of put a demographic around it. 25 to 44 years old. So that's older millennial, younger Gen X, lives in Denver. And why is this important? For us, we can monetize those customers 3 to 4 times more effectively. We still have a local sales force. So that local sales force is doing direct sold campaigns. They're reaching out to advertisers. And in general, like, yes, we do have a programmatic advertising strategy. It's a very key and core and important part of our business. But when it comes to really monetizing and attracting customers, what advertisers want is they want that right there. That's the customer they want. I already kind of mentioned this, just what a conversion was. Previously, I'd say conversion was ultimately driving print subscriptions, but I think anybody who's in my field knows that that's going to continue to go down, and our goal is to manage that decline as effectively as we can while transitioning and continuing to transition our business to digital. So what tools do we use to inform content creation? And this is really one of the big shifts. So I've told you about how we've kind of optimized our content now. But now, like, the strategy is, okay, it's not just what you think from on high is important. It's what things can we use to actually decide what we should be writing about. And that's a really difficult cultural thing. Like, think about that. Like, suddenly I've got this algorithm or this computer. And yes, like, it's driven by what humans are doing inside a search engine. But it's gone from, you have to understand just the cult, and not only do you have to understand it, but you have to be gentle with it. Like editors and people leaders who are used to deciding this is what's important, and now saying like, well, yes, like that's still valuable, and it can be valuable, but I want you to look at this other stuff too. Like, what should we be creating based on what data tells us we should be creating as well? And again, not that we're going to go chase after every little thing that the national publications are doing, but really on a more, again, local level, what is it that people locally want to know? So Google Trends, Google Keyword Planner. But the data cube is really, within BrightEdge, is really where we've had a chance to, I think, explore this in great depth. We've started actually creating an evergreen content calendar. And for us, evergreen content means, again, the kind of stuff that is going to have long tail SEO value. People are going to search for it. They're going to constantly come back to it. It's a valuable resource. It's quality. We've done it around sports content in particular, again, very popular. So things like the Broncos depth chart. Like, let's keep something about the Broncos depth chart and let's update that consistently, like as that changes throughout the season. It may be the roster. It may be lifestyle content. Tis the season, haunted houses in Denver, inside the city's scariest attractions. And using that and understanding, how we're using that. And then we use the data cube to go further into specific keywords. Like, again, what should we be looking for? Okay, so it's not just John Elway, former Denver Broncos quarterback and now executive GM for the Broncos, but like what specifically? Is it his stats? Like his stats as a quarterback or something were really important. Well, what is the best way to package that information? Let's discuss that. Let's figure out a way. Can we figure out a way to automate how we do that? Let me check my time. So where we are today with sports, again, highly competitive landscape, as I mentioned. Our launch on WordPress VIP has been a huge boon to our ability to do this. We're continuing to optimize these pages. We are nowhere near done to where we need to be. But I want to especially thank the BrightEdge professional services team who, through this content migration, which I was really excited to see went so well. Anytime, we weren't migrating URL, but we were migrating, no joke, like 15 years worth of content from one CMS to another CMS. It was a massive project. And I felt that our team really internally had a really good handle on how to do that migration. But even after that, when professional services came in, they looked and said, well, like this is all really good, but these little things, like we're noticing this and this hasn't been taken care of. And this little thing here with next and previous on index pages and stuff, not there. It was all those little things that when you're doing a massive project like this that you're gonna miss. Like that's where the BrightEdge professional services team came in and said, you're missing this. We found that there were pages that were 404ing that we thought we had fixed in the pre-prod environment that clearly had not been fixed. And again, I felt we were really prepared. But again, we missed some stuff. I talked about the 2016 elections. I want to use this example here, going back to just our mission to inform our local readers about what's valuable to the community. So a couple weeks ago, we sat around and said, we've got a whole bunch of ballot measures and propositions that people are going to be voting on in 14 days. What do we need to know? Or what do we need to do? Well, there's probably a lot of people who, despite all our coverage of this, have never heard about Amendment U or Proposition 107 in their lives. Okay, so let's create some content around that a couple weeks in advance, and let's do that. So we've done that. There's like 10 different ballot measures. We've created content around that. We published it several weeks in advance. Earlier this week, mail-in ballots came out, and like clockwork, this weekend, when people actually had a chance to open their mail-in ballots, if you looked at Chartbeat's a tool that we use to determine what people are seeing on our site in real time. You could see these things just going up through the roof. People were not only, and it was just gratifying, it was tying both SEO into our core mission of informing people, okay? We would have never previously packaged content like this. We would have, again, referred to it in like 12-inch or 400-word articles, and that was it. Now we're at the point where we're starting to create content around things that we know people are going to be looking for, and we're positioned to do that. 80 to 90% of this traffic on these articles, when they published, people were like all disappointed, like it didn't do well. And I just said, just wait 2 weeks. And again, this weekend, through the roof. We've driven about 300,000 page views to this content in just the span, again, quietly just over this weekend. I expected to stay strong through the election. This is an example of changing a culture and taking it not just from what we think we want to know, but using data to help us get there. The last thing I want to show you is how are we measuring up? Since our work in BrightEdge, this is our trend of organic traffic since our migration. It's not like some miraculous, huge, crazy, shoot through the roof thing, but you can see that trend line, without a doubt, is going in the right direction. It's building. We are up 29% year over year, as I mentioned earlier. And you can see that when we went through our migration, that we really had no negative effects. So thank you so much for the time, and I appreciate you listening.